We're going to talk about the ZIG and some of the measures put in place to support the monetary policy, but we'll talk about those later. Let me just get your initial impressions, your overall view on what you how did you think the review went and some of the measures the minister announced?
In my view, the budget review met the expectations. At a time where we had just launched ZIG, the natural expectation was for Treasury to support, to sustain, to come up with measures that sustain the ZIG, which happened. At a time where we seem to be agreeing that liquidity management is quite key, a driver of stability. Measures aimed at judicious management of liquidity are in order, are expected. At a time where we confronted with drought, now having been declared a national disaster, measures to support the vulnerable in respect of drought mitigation and even social protection.
They weren't an option, were they? They had to be done. I mean,
yes.
At the end of the day, we can't have any Zimbabwean citizen dying or suffering because of hunger or children not going to school hungry. I mean, you know, there comes a point where it doesn't matter what you may want to do, the citizen becomes more important to it than anybody else.
Yes, but you also note that those programs are being framed within the budget parameters. Exactly. Meaning that the expectation of 1.3% budget deficit is an assumption that even with those requirements, we are not going to go above that 1.3%.
First, I want to ask you, okay, budget deficit, 2.4 billion ZIG in the first half of the year, and of course the minister did, of course, as you would expect, convert the budget from Zimbabwe dollars to ZIG, 58 trillion down to what, 85 point something billion. That made sense. But deficit, are you worried? It seemed to be in the target already proposed by the minister anyway, so it looks like the deficit, and also he's made a very good comment. He said we will have enough money to be able to satisfy our budgetary requirements. They're only given out 44.2% of the budget up to date. So he has room. I mean, any comments on that deficit, and do you think that revenue expenditure mix, we're kind of getting it right, or what are your views?
Deficits are not necessarily bad, but how they are financed. Yeah. And you can see from the presentation that the minister is against monetization of the deficits. Yeah. So there will not be monetization of deficits, which is something commendable from especially the monetary side and as far as stability is concerned. Now, how do we achieve the deficit level of 1.3% without credit expansion by government or overdraft at the Reserve Bank?
Which the governor said is not going to happen under his watch.
Which is not going to happen. Yeah. So meaning that there will be prioritization of expenditures. So we're talking about drought as having been declared a national disaster. It means there might be need to take from somewhere.
Definitely. I mean, I think one of the issues which is very clear is that we obviously, if we had projects like an infrastructure, we may have to take from there, delay them a little bit to use that money for these essential things. But I'll come back to you because we have a lot to talk about. Renus, you know, one thing that was interesting, we started off the budget growth last year when he announced it, the minister was 3.5%. It's come down to 2%. It looks like the average global growth rate is 3.2%. Look, it's not just in Zimbabwe. Growth is stagnant all around the world. Look at look even at Europe. Look at other Southern African countries and other African countries. Your views on that growth rate at 2% and what impact it will have on the Zimbabwe's economy?
No, I'm actually very happy with the revision downwards of our growth. I was always very suspicious about the high growth that was projected in December, because the drought was already upon us. And I think in December, as you know, they were expecting the downturn in agriculture to be just under 5%.
Konapo, Ipapo pa ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294, the place to be.